always seem to be having a good time. And you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I'm John Dickerson. Join me for the Daily Report, weekdays on CBS News 24/7.
Tonight, Eye on America. After weeks of relentless headlines, how are Americans coping and what does it mean for voter turnout? Then a preview of Vice Presidential candidate J.D. Vance's speech. Norah O'Donnell reports from the Republican National Convention on the CBS Evening News.
Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Milwaukee, Fiserv Forum to be particular. Welcome to America Decides and the third night of the Republican National Convention. If you're going to watch with us, I want you to be prepared for what could be some mild drama. I just want to let you know in the preceding hour, technical gremlins have been roaming all over Fiserv Forum and for some reason have focused a lot of their attention right here on this particular position. So I'm going to hope this microphone keeps working, my headphones keep working, everything flows great. If it doesn't, I promise you, we will fix the problem, we'll be right back with you. But just in case, we've got some gremlins, and the gremlins are kind of aggressive this afternoon. So let's talk about what's going to happen here tonight on third day of the Republican National Convention. It, of course, is J.D. Vance's big night. The Ohio Republican senator is going to give his first national speech, his introduction to the country, if you will, after being named former President Trump's running mate. Tonight's theme, there's always a theme at major party conventions, Democrat and Republican. Tonight's Republican theme, quote, make America strong once again. The focus, as you might imagine, on foreign policy and national security. And it comes after the U.S. detected a potential Iranian plot to kill former President Trump. That plot completely separate, entirely separate, we want to underscore, from Saturday's attempted assassination on President Trump's life in Butler, Pennsylvania, that Saturday evening, something that has changed the entire emotional underpinning of this Republican National Convention. I want to go outside Fiserv Forum where we find our good friend Ed O'Keefe. Ed, good to see you. Your anticipation for this evening, it is quite clearly going to be a moment for J.D. Vance not only to introduce himself to the country, but to explain just how closely aligned he will be with the Trump agenda.
Yeah, a lot for him to do tonight in a short amount of time. First of all, introduce himself to a country that's still trying to Google through the facts about him and maybe catch up on his book or the movie. Introduce his wife, a very accomplished attorney herself, and their children and their life story. As you said, explain where he now aligns with former President Trump after so vociferously critiquing him during the 2016 campaign and declaring himself a never-Trumper. What is it specifically about the Trump presidency that turned things around for him? I'd love to get an explanation for that tonight. And then does he take on the traditional attack dog role that so many running mates normally do, calling out the incumbent administration or the rival team for whatever it is they're doing wrong and that they would do right? A lot for him to lay out there in a primetime hour tonight, as he is the youngest person now involved in the two tickets, the first millennial to run on a major party ticket, the first Iraq war veteran to appear on one as well. A lot of generational firsts as he goes up against Vice President Harris, who, of course, has a handful of firsts of her own. And behind us here, Major, the delegates are starting to trickle into the building. If you haven't had a chance to play cornhole out here, I highly recommend you take the 10. We grab some of these and might go play ourselves in a little bit.
Very good.
What else you got?
The house band, Wire 6, is playing, as I'm sure everyone can hear, from Nashville. So I hope you can hear what I'm about to play for you and our audience. It's an appearance that J.D. Vance made earlier today in Milwaukee, and we gave kind of an introduction into how he's going to describe who he thinks President Trump is and why he would be the leader for these times. Let's take a quick listen.
As soon as I knew he was okay, I felt relief, and then I was like, I cannot believe an assassin tried to take down the President of the United States. I was mad about it. Was he mad and angry? He called for national unity. He called for calm. He showed leadership, my friends, that the media keeps on saying they want somebody to tone down the temperature. Well, Donald Trump got shot, and he toned down the temperature. That's what a real leader does.
Ed, I'm going to offer this prediction. If J.D. Vance says something like that tonight, it will come close to bringing down the House.
Probably would, and it would signal that they're really trying to build anticipation to a different kind of message from Trump himself tomorrow night. This will be the first time he gives extended remarks since the assassination attempt. Does he indeed try to strike a different tone? That is what Vance is now inviting by saying that. And that, of course, helps build intrigue heading into the big night when the nominee takes the stage. So, but also a signal there that while he says Trump's going to try to play it cool, perhaps Vance himself will continue to bring a little heat, as, again, the running mate traditionally does.
And, Ed, the theme tonight, as I mentioned, national security, foreign policy, and the umbrella terminology against the Biden White House would be weakness. You cover the White House on a daily basis. You're not speaking for them, but from their orientation to this long-standing charge from Republicans, what does the White House say?
They would say a few things. One, the war in Afghanistan, which was unpopular and should have been ended much sooner, has ended. That it ended in a chaotic and deadly way is unfortunate, but also emblematic of what war is and can be. And they acknowledge that remains a real big, dark mark on their record over the last 3+ years. They would also say that they're doing their darndest to make sure that there is eventually, and pretty soon, hopefully, some kind of a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. And the president can definitely bring the receipts in terms of how much time he has put towards making sure that those parties continue talking to each other, deploying officials on his team to help make it happen. There is another round of talks underway right now. We'll see if there's any progress to report there. And then, of course, the big one that the president can't seem to go a few sentences without mentioning, is NATO. The idea that the world's largest military alliance is only stronger now in the wake of Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, that they believe American support for the war and for NATO more broadly remains, and that kind of engagement to stop authoritarian regimes is required of the United States in the 21st century if democracy is going to continue. They would argue, and they will, and they have been already, that guys like J.D. Vance and the Republican Party are trying to pull back, and that would be dangerous for the world and for the United States.
Outside Fiserv Forum for us, Ed O'Keefe, thank you very much. I want to go now to Caitlin Huey-Burns. Caitlin is coming to us from the podium just off, well, it's a podium position just to the side of the main stage. Caitlin, I want to play for you before I get to a question, something we heard from former UN ambassador to the Trump administration. People forget that, Nikki Haley last night. Let's play that soundbite.
I'm here tonight because we have a country to save. And a unified Republican Party is essential for saving her.
Caitlin, your reaction to that appeal for unity from Nikki Haley, and how much do you think that might have, to use an old cliched term, moved the needle?
Major, good to be with you. So I'm at this podium position, as you mentioned, and this is exactly where I was sitting last night when Nikki Haley took the stage. I'm to the right of the stage, so I can see her, but also the audience when she comes in. And remember, as we were talking about yesterday, this is a Republican Party base very averse to Nikki Haley. This is not a receptive crowd, and her campaign was an acknowledgement that this is no longer really her Republican Party. But Major, the crowd was very receptive to her message last night, because she came out from the onset and said she's making no qualms about it. She's endorsing Donald Trump. You played a little bit of sound. That was her overarching message. But earlier we had heard from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis kind of offering that red meat to the base. Nikki Haley's argument was that, yes, the party needs to unify, but the party also needs to expand beyond its base. And a lot of what she was saying, Major, too, I think reflected a lot of the voter conversations that you and I and our colleagues have been having, that very few Americans right now are happy with the choices that they have. They complain to us about it all the time, and perhaps rightfully so. But her argument last night, I think, was also a message to those voters. Hey, look, you may not like these choices. I may not like these choices, but elections are about choices, and I've made mine. And I think that has the potential, perhaps, to speak to those maybe Republican-oriented voters who haven't yet come to Trump's camp.
And because you had that unique position to look down on the delegates throughout the speech, did you sense Caitlin, from your perspective, that momentum built, that maybe it was polite to begin with and maybe rose to a little bit of a minor league crescendo for Nikki Haley by the time she finished, meaning that she warmed this audience up?
Earlier in the night, it was interesting because Ted Cruz was on the stage, and remember his speech in 2016 where he told the convention to vote your conscience. I think a lot of people were, kind of waiting to see exactly what Nikki Haley would say, and there was a sense of relief as soon as she kind of got that off the bat, that, okay, this is not going to be that speech. And there's also been a theme of this convention, Major, which is that we've heard from a lot of critics of Donald Trump. One of those critics, or former critics, I should say, one of those former critics is going to be sharing the ticket with him, J.D. Vance. And a big theme of this convention has been look at those who weren't with this movement before, who have come around, who have essentially converted to the cause. And that is kind of an underlying theme of this convention that is trying to kind of rally the party around the nominee.
Yes, the leader of the movement is former President Trump, and the movement is bigger than any other single Republican critic. That was proven in the primaries. It has been proven even more vividly here at the Republican National Convention. Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you so very much. President Biden is courting Black and Latino voters in Nevada again today. Next, Missouri Democratic Congressman Emanuel Cleaver joins us. You are streaming America Decides.
Coming up, our series. Wait a minute. Tom, is that you working the camera?
Keep leaning out of your close-up.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty good. Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
That desired farm, it's a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
This is a fellow who in the United States Senate participated in blocking protections for IVF. This is an individual who has said he is for a national and has made every indication that he is for a national abortion ban. And so, again, this is where the power is with the people. We have an election coming up.
That was Vice President Kamala Harris reacting to J.D. Vance, the Ohio Republican senator, being added to Donald Trump's presidential ticket as the running mate. I want to bring in Missouri Democratic Congressman Emanuel Cleaver, who joins me from Kansas City, Missouri, one of my favorite places in America, as a proud graduate of the University of Missouri. Congressman, it is great to see you. Sir, there's been some pretty heavyweight news in Democratic circles today. First, Adam Schiff, a colleague of yours running for the United States Senate in California, currently a congressman representing district in California, today called on President Biden to step aside. Your reaction?
Well, I have an enormous amount of respect for Representative Schiff. I'm, in fact, one of his big fans, and I've actually said that to him, as is members of my family. But I think I've said it many, many times, and it is a truth that cannot be pushed out of the way, and that is that unless Joe Biden decides himself that he's not going to run, all of the major figures in the Democratic Party can ask him to leave. And if he doesn't want to leave, there's no way to get him out. He is the delegate. He is a presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party for the November election. That's the way it stands right now. And if we keep hanging out here in the forest of indecisiveness, we're going to make sure we lose. I think I'm very much concerned. Look, not to decide is, at least in this case, a decision. And so we're hanging up here, we got to make a decision. We got to make a decision. We don't. If we don't make, and I think if something is going to happen, it has to happen within the next week. If not, I think the decision is already made.
In light of that, decision's already made, observation from you, Congressman Cleaver, and I take every point you just made. He is the presumptive nominee. He has all the delegates, twice as many delegates as he needs. There is no mechanism absent President Biden deciding to step down to, in a very short order, dislodge him from that path to nominee status. And yet, as Democrats often say, the voice of the people matters. And there's an Associated Press poll that today says 65% of adults surveyed who describe themselves as Democrats say they would prefer President Biden not be the nominee. What does that tell you?
It tells me that we have a lot of work to do. I'm hopefully not wallowing in some kind of field of hiding from the truth. We've got a lot of work to do. The president has a lot of work to do, and we have a short time to get it done. But things can change overnight. Anything can happen. The president may end up getting involved in a 200-yard sprint and win and win the election. But I do think that I understand when a person allows a goal to die, a part of their somebodyness dies. And I think Joe Biden's goal is to win a second term. And I have not seen anything that would suggest that he's moving in that direction. I was one of the first people out on the point for now President Joe Biden. Former secretaries, and a lot of members from Congress were slipping and sliding down the streets of Iowa, not getting very many people in any crowd. And John Kerry and I were on that bus. And one of the biggest rallies we got was at a church in Cedar Rapids. I think we got 22 people. But a few months later, Joe Biden was fighting it out for the election, winning the election. So I'm not ready to just say it's automatic. We're automatically going to lose. I am realistic enough to say that it does not look good. I'm not I'm not going to pretend that everything is great. It is not. And since you're from my home state, I've got to be straight with you.
Understood. Based on what you've seen in the first 2 days of this Republican convention, do you find issues or points of contrast that can or should be a springboard for President Biden?
Oh, my goodness, yes. I think all of the talk that is going on about the news media lying on President Trump, I keep hoping somebody will say to people who make that comment or issue that statement to start naming the things that the media lied about. I'm at a loss, and I think probably millions of Americans would love to know what the media is lying about, and because that could change people's mind, and Trump's numbers may go up if they say, well, he never said that that people coming across the border were vermin. They could say they could really put a great campaign together saying that the news media is in cahoots with the Democrats. And those of us who've been around know that the news media, unfortunately for us sometimes, is not in anybody's pocket. And that's just one of the things. I mean, those 28 lies are still 28 lies. And calling it the truth is not going to change the fact that it is still a lie.
And Congressman Cleaver, right before I let you go, I would say if you would be so kind to let me summarize your comments to us today to fellow Democrats. Stop pushing the panic button. It's not working. Is that a fair summary?
That's almost a direct quote.
Because there's no panic button big enough to deal with this situation. And the more panic that you convey as a party to the public, the worse it's going to turn out, if I hear you correctly.
Yes, we're out beating up on a person who is going to be our nominee. And I think the Republicans have exercised a tremendous amount of discipline. They have just allowed Democrats to go out and slap their candidate around. And they'll just wait until after the Democratic convention and then use all the things that Democrats are saying against our nominee, who will be Joe Biden. And I think the best thing for us to do is to come together and start figuring out how we can make big things happen in a short period of time.
Coming to us from the great city of Kansas City, Missouri, Congressman Emanuel Cleaver. Thank you very much, sir.
Good to be with you.
As more Democrats express misgivings about President Biden and his future on the ticket, are Republicans basically setting themselves up for what could be a big victory in November? We're going to take a closer look, try to answer that question when we come back on America Decides.
On our places, bright shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team. Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen, because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate.
Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes.
Did you ever have these problems before the derailment?
No, ma'am. This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing, bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else.
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to America Decides and our continuing coverage of the Republican National Convention live from Fiserv Forum here in Milwaukee. I told you about those gremlins. Mark my words, they're still menacing. We're keeping them at bay, but they're making lots of efforts to distract us. Haven't derailed us yet, so it's all good. Ed O'Keefe joins us again from outside Fiserv Forum. Ed, as you know, national conventions are about programming. And usually the opposition party does a little bit of light counter-programming, but there is something full-blown going on in Democratic circles that is like a mini-series drama, not counter-programming. The very fate of President Biden and his path to nomination. We just had a conversation with Congressman Emanuel Cleaver who said it's basically settled, but that doesn't stop the conversation from persisting. What are you hearing? What's your latest analysis?
Well, the biggest shoe to drop today was that of Adam Schiff when he suggested that the president needs to get out. And why that matters is because he's raised tens of millions of dollars for what's an all but certain victory in his U.S. Senate race out in California. It's going to instantly make him a generational leader in the party. And he's somebody who's keen to help colleagues in the House and the Senate, given how much money he was able to raise for himself that he doesn't necessarily need. He wants to go out and be on the fundraising circuit, cutting ads or sending fundraising appeals on behalf of guys running in the House all over the country and others running in the Senate. And I think what's happening is he, like many others, is either starting to see fundraising get withheld or polling internally that suggests softness in places where it shouldn't be or where it was feared before. And so that's driving a lot of this. The other thing I keep being told, though, Major, and I think it's important for us to point out to our viewers, is we all want to know who's up and who's down. We all want to be able to read a poll, a good one, like the one CBS does, to give us a sense of where things are. And the most recent one we had that came out Sunday gave advantage Trump by single digits in all the battleground states, which means that if it were held today, Donald Trump would go back to the White House. It doesn't happen, however, until November. And you're not going to be able to do a good poll, historically speaking, of what transpires this week until next Thursday at the earliest, because you usually got to wait a week to let this marinate. And that's what the polling that was released on Sunday was. It was a week plus from the bad debate. Well, what happened the night before? The assassination attempt. So now you got to go back and assess for that too, plus the convention, plus the bad debate. And maybe by next week we start to get a real good public sense of where things are. The president's team knows this, and they make the argument, if you really had an issue with me, you should have been running against me. And if you still have an issue with me, go ahead and make motions in the various committee meetings that are going to be held in advance or at the convention to either put your name in a nomination or try playing games. And nobody, as far as we can tell, Major, has tried to do that yet. We've made the calls. We're keeping eyes out. We're tracking document movements. And there's nothing to suggest that anybody else is currently trying to do it. So they're sitting around, biting their nails, clutching their pearls, you know, sweating it out, and watching Republicans this week probably relish and maximize on what happened on Saturday in the political sense, and they're just extremely worried that they may be headed to a really, really big loss.
Nails and pearls. It's not a hair salon, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Democratic Party. Ed O'Keefe, outside of Fiserv Forum, thank you very much. Molly Ball joins me now. She is a senior political correspondent at the Wall Street Journal. Molly, great to see you. Hope you are well and enjoying things here in Milwaukee. Give me your thoughts on the state of this Democratic conversation. We'll get to the Republicans and J.D. Vance in a moment, but this is a big story that is still going on now in week 3 or 4 almost. I've lost track.
Yeah, it's a slow motion implosion. And as you heard from Congressman Cleaver, there's a lot of worry among Democrats that not only are they burdened by a nominee who may not be viable, but simply by airing all of these grievances at this stage in the campaign, they may be hurting the party even further. So there's a feeling that they're in sort of a lose-lose situation. It's not looking good in the polls if they stick with what they have. But the uncertainty, if they were to change things up, also could be damaging. And the fact that this public debate is being had is damaging. The debate performance that Joe Biden had and the uncertainty about that now attends every public utterance that he makes is damaging. So I think Democrats are in a panic mode, and they don't know what to do because it seems like all of the options are just as bad.
Molly, you're an astute student of the Trump movement and the modern Republican Party. What do you think it means for the future of the Republican Party under former President Trump that he chose J.D. Vance as his running mate and not someone who would have been more aligned with checking a box for establishmentarian Republicans or Republicans of a different era?
Yeah, well, as you said, this is not a pick that gives comfort to the old Republican Party. And it's clear that Trump's takeover and reshaping of the Republican Party is complete. He has remade the party in his image. All of the programming that has been that we've heard in the convention so far, from union leaders to working class people and minorities, it all testifies to this different party that the Republican Party has now become, and he's very confident about it. And I think that's the other thing that the Vance pick represents, is he doesn't feel the need to share power with the old guard anymore. He doesn't feel the need to reassure the rank and file of the old country club Republican Party who may not be on board with this new style, because he feels that they have nowhere else to go. It looks like he's going to win. And so he's anointing a new generation, potentially an heir, who can take that Trumpist philosophy forward into the future.
Molly Ball, always great to have you with us. We're smarter when you're here. Thank you so very much. Afghanistan war veteran and Florida Congressman Brian Mast is among those speaking tonight here at the Republican National Convention. He will be joining us next. Stay tuned for that. You're streaming America Decides.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail. What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot
ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable.
The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Our enemies do not confine their designs to between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. America cannot afford 4 more years of a weekend at Bernie's presidency.
There's a cycle to primary presidential politics. There's no love lost in the primaries, lots of difficult rhetoric between challengers to anyone. And of course, that was true this year. Republicans and former President Trump, they're competitors, and they passed it back and forth rhetorically. But last night, of course, several of his vanquished rivals came on the stage here at the Republican National Convention, among them Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, former U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley. They called for their party to unify behind nominee former President Trump. I want to bring into our conversation here at the convention Florida Republican Congressman Brian Mast. Brian, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Current Republican Congressman.
Current, what did I say?
Former.
Really? I apologize for that.
Right.
Current Congressman.
Yeah.
Good standing. Also chairman of Veterans for President Trump.
Correct.
First thing I want you to establish for our audience, you're going to be speaking later tonight in the program. Explain your role in the United States Army, the injuries you suffered, because when you come on stage, many Americans who do not know you well will see something that may not expect.
I was injured in Afghanistan back in 2010. I was a bomb technician, or EOD. I tried to disarm one too many, and I ended up losing 2 legs and a finger in Afghanistan. I have many friends that lost far more, to include their lives. But as you mentioned, I do chair Veterans for Trump. I was speaking about both President Trump's intent for the military and some of the changes he would see made, juxtaposed to some of the things that we see coming out of the Biden administration for the military and veterans.
If you were to try to sharpen the contrast between 3.5 years of Biden policy in the U.S. military and what you would expect from a second Trump administration, what would those contrasts be?
We don't have to guess, as was said last night, about what President Trump would do. It's defense, it's deterrence, it's the world knows that if Donald Trump puts a red line out there, that is a red line, and do not cross it. And you get conflicting things out of the Biden administration. Israel is an easy example to talk about. If the president doing a speech in Detroit, he's going to, I think, pander to an audience that's against Israel. So if he's speaking in Miami, he's going to pander to, speak to an audience that is for Israel. And you see constant conflicting messages out of him. Out of President Trump, you will get a yes is yes and a no is no.
Let's talk about Israel and Gaza for a second. Do you believe, Congressman Mast, there is a definitive separation between Hamas and Palestinian civilians, and that U.S. policy, even under a Trump administration, should take some awareness of Israel military actions that kill or harm civilians in Gaza?
Undoubtedly, there are Palestinian civilians. There are 3, 4, 5, 6-year-olds, things like that, right? And it goes beyond that age. But nobody should be loosely using the term Palestinian civilian, because there are Palestinians, what people would call Palestinian civilians, and they just call them that because they're under the age of 18. But there are many fighters under the age of 18. They'd call them that just because they're females, but there are many fighters that are females. They'd call them that just because they're over the age of 45, but there are fighters over the age of 45. many that were, across the gamut of these ages and sexes and you name it, that were digging tunnels or drive trucks that are transporting rockets or other munitions, or the list goes on and on. Just because they're not wearing a black hood and a green bandana does not mean that they're just an innocent Palestinian civilian, and that's unfortunately what you'd like to see a lot of the world saying right now.
Let's talk about China. In the conversations I've heard, not just the typical conversation about China as a threat to U.S., but I've heard several Republicans talk to me about China and artificial intelligence and the imperative for the U.S. to be prepared for that quote-unquote arms race. I'd like your thoughts on that.
Look, it's AI, it's hypersonics, it's China building transoceanic militaries, which has the, exact purpose of being able to transport their military across an ocean to bring them to other places. All of these threats weigh in with one another. What's going on in space. President Trump created a space force. He was looking into the future for what those threats would be there. And I think, again, this is what you get out of a Trump administration. You get an anticipation of what will be needed in the future. You get, again, your yes is yes, your no is no, which is the strongest thing that you can have in foreign policy. Those foreign leaders, all of their intelligence agencies, they don't have the luxury of being able to gaslight the leaders of their nations. They are very serious with their nations when they say, President Trump will do this, or Joe Biden will do this, or, the list goes on and on. They don't get to gaslight their leaders. They have to assess the truth, and they know Donald Trump means business.
Florida Congressman Brian Mast, chairman of Veterans for Trump. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the questions.
Good. J.D. Vance is set to share his story with Americanite. It's a big, big event. He's going to give his first speech to a national audience right here at the Republican National Convention. What we might expect to hear from the former president's running mate right here in Milwaukee. That's next. You're streaming America Decides.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking.
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
Innovative and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
On 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Haitians are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to the Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's gonna be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm gonna remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was gonna be born, he was only gonna live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift, stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation.
people looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to America Decides. Thanks so much for staying with us here in Milwaukee. Fiserv Forum is the place for night 3 of the Republican National Convention. I want to update you on some important news. Of course, J.D. Vance has been named as former President Trump's running mate. And as is important in a situation like that, just this afternoon, J.D. Vance has received and will continue to have around him Secret Service protection. That is a standard protocol. But even standard protocols in the aftermath of the assassination attempt on former President Trump Saturday takes on larger significance. Our Robert Costa joins us now from the convention floor. Robert, always good to see you. What are you looking for tonight? What is it that you will be paying most close attention to in the tone and the tenor of J.D. Vance tonight?
Major, I'm going to answer that with a bit of reporting that's not really been discussed in a lot of the previews of Senator Vance's speech. Yes, we of course expect to hear about his upbringing in Southern Ohio. Of course, we expect to hear about his military service, about the times that led to him writing Hillbilly Elegy. But what I'm really going to actually be listening for is, does he underscore his own position on economics, in particular antitrust policy? He has been someone who has been a supporter of the FTC chair, Lena Khan, for lawsuits against big tech companies and other companies. This is something that has raised concerns among my sources in the business community. They look at the Vance pick and they say, is former President Trump moving in an anti-business direction or a somewhat hostile position on Wall Street? And so they're going to be listening closely in the CEO suites around the country. Is Vance going to start really pushing his own economic agenda, or is he just going to play up his biography and play up the Trump position? I'm also going to see if he says anything at all on abortion rights. The Democrats, including Vice President Harris, already talking extensively about Senator Vance and his past comments on reproductive rights. That will be something Democrats will be watching closely based on my conversations with top sources today.
And Robert, anything else buzzing on the floor of the convention? Convention floors are where delegates interact, lots of prominent figures in the party. There's been some pretty interesting developments in the future of President Biden and the Democratic ticket. Anything else you're hearing there?
Major, you are steeped in convention history. What's notable to me walking around the convention floor here is how much Senator Vance is not necessarily a topic. This is not a surprise pick. A lot of people here already know him. Now, the country will be introduced to Senator Vance tonight in many respects. He's not well known in every single kind of general audience community around the country. But among Republicans, he's a frequent guest on conservative talk shows. He's on conservative podcasts. He's close to Donald Trump Jr. So those here who are plugged in, they know him well. They want to see, does he have chemistry with former President Trump in the box? They're kind of watching those intangibles, but they know him. So it's not like it's Sarah Palin, the former governor picked in 2008, who came truly out of nowhere to surprise the Republican Party when she was on Senator McCain's ticket. This time around, there's a lot of goodwill towards Senator Vance, but there's no sense that he's not ready for this moment or not really known. They know him, they like him, and they hope he meets his mark.
Robert Costa from the convention floor, thank you very, very much. I want to bring in Leanne Caldwell. She is the co-author of the Washington Post Daily Brief and an anchor for Washington Post Live. Leanne, always good to see you. So, the conversation I keep picking up here, and it's had built through Monday, Tuesday, and today, is Republicans have this sense of, I won't say limitless expectations, but rising expectations about their prospects in November. Is that something you're hearing as well?
Absolutely, Major. It is amazing how palpable the excitement and the energy here is in Milwaukee, especially inside the arena on that convention floor, talking to not only delegates, but also elected officials up and down the ballot, people who are running for House or Senate seats as well. And they think that they're in an extremely good position for a couple reasons. They think that they were in a good position before the presidential debate and President Biden's debate performance nearly 3 weeks ago. But since then, they say they feel it's gone almost better for them. And then, of course, the attempted assassination of the former president over the past weekend. They think that that is going to appeal to voters, bring out a sympathy vote. I was speaking with the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, yesterday, and he told me that it seems that there has absolutely been a shift, that he's feeling it around the country. He's feeling it in districts, especially in those districts that Democrats and states that Democrats need to win, not only for President Biden or for Donald Trump to win, but also for the House to maintain their House majority, the Republicans to maintain their majority, and also to pick up the Senate as well, Major.
And Leanne, I agree. Everything you've heard is what I've heard. And yet today I interviewed Brian Kemp, Republican governor from Georgia, who said, yeah, I remember all that talk in 2022 also. And it fell apart in the closing days. He is of the mind that Republicans would be wise, and he is sort of urging them. Do not take anything for granted. Do not feel that this win that you sense at your back is going to be continuous. There's still a lot of hard work to do on the ground. He may be a kind of lonely voice in all this sort of momentary euphoria, but I took that on board as a Republican who's saying, hey, gang, don't measure the curtains before Election Day.
Yeah, there's still more than 100 days until Election Day, so that's pretty sage advice from someone who has been through elections before. And remember, the former president, he has won once. Donald Trump won in 2016. He lost in 2018 as far as seats go in Congress. He lost his reelection in 2020. He performed worse than expected in 2022. Democrats performed better than expected. And so Donald Trump actually doesn't have that great of a track record. But I will say his political fortunes have just completely changed in the past month. Ever since the Supreme Court ruled that presidential acts are immune, throwing his criminal cases up in the air, he had, a decent debate against President Biden just because of President Biden's performance. Democrats are in open warfare at this moment, and then, his documents case in Florida just got thrown out, and then Elon Musk pledged $45 million a month to Donald Trump's campaign or the political organizations around him. And so he hasn't had an incredible luck streak compared to where he was after the 2020 election when he didn't really have much of a grip on the party. So yeah, there's absolutely a ton of time left into this election, and anything can happen. We don't know. We didn't predict such a bad debate performance from Biden. We didn't predict an attempted assassination. And so, yeah, probably good advice from Brian Kemp there.
Leanne Caldwell, The Washington Post, we thank you very much for your time and your expertise. I spoke with Vivek Ramaswamy this week for my podcast, The Takeout, a part of our conversation. Well, that's coming up next. You are streaming America Decides.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that? Why won't you say the word crisis?
You're not answering my question.
This really
Is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean?
What does that mean in
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
What happened?
Why?
It's time for the CBS News Original 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of them.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis cities and families are facing as they fight to survive.
The United States still has that glimmer of hope for people to come here.
Fighting for a future. Now streaming on the free CBS News app. An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Since you started La Soup in 2014, do you have any sense as to how much food you've rescued from the landfill?
We've rescued 4.5 million pounds.
I can't even fathom how much food that is.
And that's one little person in one little city in America. We're going to call this chicken piccata. We did 450 of these meals today.
This is the exact dish that you and I are going to have.
Yep.
Oh, really good.
Is it good?
Mm-hmm.
Having a plan of how to keep people fed should be in every single city.
So if we eliminated food waste, could we eliminate
hunger? Yes.
Eating Trash, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail.
What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party? Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
When people say who's first to get in the morning, that would be me. Morning news matters because it sets the tone for your day, and it's a way of getting you started.
Day to day, that first draft of history, it happens right here.
We're going to uplift you. We're going to send you out your way.
We take you places, we teach you new things, and we make you feel like, you know, it's not all bad.
People say to me, you always seem to be having a good time. And you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
Welcome back to special America Decides coverage of the Republican National Convention right here in Milwaukee. Earlier today, I spoke with former presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy for my show, The Takeout, about J.D. Vance and the state of the presidential race. You went to school at Yale with J.D. Vance.
I did.
Tell my audience something that they may not know if they do the quick Wikipedia search of J.D. Vance.
He's a sincere person, and he's somebody who actually cares deeply about the country. But our relationship was actually built on healthy debate, actually, believe it or not. We agree on most major policy questions.
What kind of things did you kick around at Yale?
You know, back then, I got to remember it'd be whatever the topic of the day was. I think we actually both took, I think, a class on health law together, if I don't remember incorrectly. And so those would be the kinds of things that would come out of the classroom, lunch table, cafeteria, conversations. We'd watch Bengals games at a local bar. That would be a time to kind of catch up on whatever was on our minds in a bigger way. Our families have become good friends as well because his wife was also our classmate in law school. And my wife went to Yale for undergrad and she went there for med school and lived in the same, kind of college as his wife did or something like this. So a lot of connections going back a long time. Our kids are about the same age. They've been very gracious, actually. Even Usha would give us children's books of their kids who are a little bit older than ours along the way. And I think they're kind of family that reflects not the weird distortion of people you see in American politics, who are almost, many of whom at least could be caricatures of real human beings. He's just a real, gentle, good-hearted human being who cares deeply about the country, and I'm really proud of him.
Not to be contentious, because I'm not a Ivy League person, but you can go to an Ivy League school, graduate, and not be a snooty intellectual elitist, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think JD embodies that. But I think that there's also...
But there's a caricature that comes with that, too, sometimes.
Meaning?
In Republican circles, that if you go to an Ivy League, you're an elitist, you're out of touch, you're snooty.
I'm not somebody who does that.
Yeah.
So you don't get that from me. I generally don't even use the term the elites very much, largely because I just think it's so overbroad and it doesn't really capture what the real dividing lines are.
Does it matter? After the first 2 days of this convention, what you have seen, the enthusiasm, which is clearly evident here, there's a kind of fervor that I think has been intensified. Anyone would notice that here at the convention after the near tragic events, and for the families involved, tragic events in Butler, Pennsylvania. Do you think it matters who the Democratic nominee is?
I don't think it should matter. If we're doing our jobs right, and I believe we will, and I believe Donald Trump will, I don't think it should matter, and here's why. The Republican Party has the chance to now be the party of national unity. That's a beautiful thing. It's something that nobody expected even 8 years ago. Biden ran on the promise of uniting the country. I think he's failed, or we wouldn't be where we are. But the more we focus, as I see us doing here, on who we are and what we stand for, not just as Republicans, but as Americans, the less relevant it becomes which puppet, if I may call it that, which puppet they put up to carry out their agenda. And the reality is that's going to be good for not just the Republican Party, but good for the country. And I think we have an opportunity to do something of a scale that Ronald Reagan did in the 1980s. It's been a generation since we've had that type of unifying event in an election. I think 2024 could be that year.
What is in the future for Vivek Ramaswamy? Jim Banks said recently that Governor Mike DeWine should appoint you to the vacancy that if the Trump-Vance ticket is elected will be created in the United States Senate in Ohio, or would you be more preferably inclined to accept a position in a Trump administration should there be one? What's in the future for you?
I'm going to keep an open mind, and I want to assess what maximizes my impact on this country. I'm particularly passionate about shutting down the regulatory state and the administrative state, the fourth branch of government. There's ways to do that through the executive branch. There's ways to do that through the legislative branch, through the Senate, or otherwise. So I want to keep an open mind. I'm grateful for the interest that not only Republicans, but people across this country have had in my future and how I'm going to be able to serve the country.
That does it for me, at least for now. I will be back at 7 p.m. Eastern. CBS News 24/7 will bring you continuous coverage of the Republican National Convention right here from Milwaukee. One other note, America decides 1, technical gremlins 0. The Daily Report with John Dickerson, that starts right now.
Welcome to the Daily Report for July 17th, 2024. I'm John Dickerson. President Biden campaigns in Las Vegas, but his party thinks he's the gamble. Fresh polls show Democrats want a different choice, and Congressman Adam Schiff says Biden should drop out. The Republican convention rolls into its third day. 39-year-old J.D. Vance